repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings. It's been a little long time, I guess. I got a little busy, but I'm trying to, I guess we can call it a hiatus. I've been, doing work and stuff, and because I produce other people's podcasts, theirs is more important than mine, so mine gets shoved off to the side. Plus, it's been, with the pandemic kind of, I don't want to say coming to a close, but relaxing a bit, or people getting out more. It's been more and more difficult to schedule these because I like to do them in person. So that's what's been happening. I'm going to try to do more. I'm going to try to be regular about it. But who knows? We'll see. It's blathering, so anything can and does happen. But please do me a favor, rate and review this on whatever platform that you listen to it on. Send me an email if you have any questions, fitz@rockvox.com. I'd appreciate it. And you can also check out the website, positiveblatherings.com, which really is a poor excuse for a website. It is just a link to this show. So there you go. Enough blathering about myself. My guest today, it's been a long time coming. She's been in the studio quite a few times with the Willow Purple Table Talks and also Ask Me Anything, which was a live broadcast that they did on social media where people could chime in and ask Lisa anything. Lisa Nolan is here with me today. She is the Director of Prevention Education for Willow Domestic Violence Center. I'm so happy to have you here finally.
I'm excited to finally be here.
Yes. I was absolutely amazed by your skill at sitting down for, was it a half hour? Or was it an hour?
It was an hour.
It was an hour, which is even more impressive. You sat down and we were expecting, a decent amount of comments in the Facebook feed to so you could field the questions. And there weren't as many as perhaps we would have liked, but you were ready to fill that time. And coming from a broadcasting background, I know that sometimes even filling a minute can seem like an eternity. But you really crushed that. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, thanks. I think I've missed my calling a little bit.
I don't think you have. I think you have multiple callings.
I think I have a few callings that I'm recognizing now later in life. Yeah. But filling time and, talking about something that I care about and I'm passionate about, I can definitely fill that time. Don't give me a microphone.
Too late.
Too late.
So your job as the Director of Prevention Education, it's pretty straightforward, but tell me, I know that education is probably the most important part of prevention. Mm-hmm. So, and I could probably go for an hour asking you questions, and I know you could answer them. But going back, I wanted to kind of get an idea of what led you down the path that you're on now, how you got to Willow, how you got into this line of work, and, where you obtained the passion for this. Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting story, really. I have been at Willow for about 3.5 years. And prior to that, I actually have spent my career in higher education working with college students. So I have a master's degree in college administration and working with college students. It's interesting because I did that for a long time, about 15 years. And in the last 9 years that I worked with students, my role, for lack of a better comparison, was the campus judge. So, young people, they go to school, they do things that they're not supposed to do. They break rules. They, do some things that aren't so bad, and they do some things that are really bad. Yeah. And, they have to talk to somebody. There's conversations, there's consequences, and that was me for a long time. And in that role, it's interesting. Oh boy, I have stories for hours and hours from that job of funny things and tragic things that happen to students. But part of that became in like 2011 when the administration at the time rolled out some new regulations on Title IX, if you've heard of Title IX, and, the campus sort of sexual assault movement that has happened in the past 10 years, that all kind of started in about 2011. And it fell sort of under me when we started it on our campus. So it was meeting with students and talking to them and hearing their stories of, assault and dating violence and stalking and what was happening in their lives, and just growing that, collecting those stories and hearing that both from people who had survived it and from accused students too, and hearing their stories. And, after 9 years of hearing all kinds of stories about alcohol and drugs and assault and all kinds of stuff, I had worked really closely with the staff at Willow to do training and to support our students on our campus. And I had met with the person who did my job before, shout out to Pam Graham, and I said, what does it take to do this job? This seems really great. I would love to be on a prevention side rather than a consequence side. And she said, I'm going to hire you. And I was like, well, I wasn't asking for a job right now. Can we talk about this? But literally, she just got the train in motion and connected me and said, you can do this. You're a great trainer. Come over here and work with us and do this on the opposite side. So it was a little bit of a roundabout way. If you'd asked me 10 years ago what I thought I would be doing, this is definitely not it. I would have had never considered something like this.
What was
ever.
that path? Because that's exactly what I was going to ask you next.
I don't know. Well, I was working with college students. My master's degree is in college administration. So, staying on a campus, working with students, doing academic advising. I was really in student life. So, behaviors and campus events and that kind of stuff, which was great. But I think at some point that gets tiring because it's a lot of nights and weekends and all that kind of stuff. So I think I was moving to more of an administrative piece of it, more behind the scenes kind of stuff. But, I don't know that I had an ultimate goal there other than I always assumed that I would stay on campuses.
And just work with
work with college students. Because they're so much fun. There's so much fun. What I miss most about that job too is being plugged into what's happening.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because I would always be like, what are the kids talking about? Yeah, right. Can you tell me what this social media thing means? Because I don't really know. What are the drugs that are happening out there? Tell me more about that drug. What is it? How do you get it? Where do you? Yeah. And the students were just open books. They would tell you everything, and it was awesome. And even in just 3 short years that I've been away, I'm like, I don't know anything. I'm officially feel like an old person now because I'm like, what are the kids talking about? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 3 teenagers and I'm really out of touch. You have to be in the thick of it to know. And it's constantly changing.
And it's constantly changing.
Even like you said, even 3 years, you'd be like, wow, who's that guy? What's that?
Yeah.
What's this about?
Right. What is the song that everybody's listening to right now? What's happening? Which bars are the popular bars right now? I don't even know.
Yeah, that's...
I don't know. Where do they go out? Don't know.
But that's good to know. That's good stuff to know in what you do. And especially with this, too, to know kind of what the trends are with younger people. And so, obviously, if I don't want to ask you any questions that could put anyone at risk, obviously, I'm not going to ask you for names and things like that. I won't answer them. Yeah, you just won't. Next, please. But what are some of the things that you've found over the years that kind of were the big red flags that you try to teach people about? Like the first red flag that if someone comes to you and says, I have a feeling that this could be a problem, and is there a first behavior? Is there something? And I know a lot of times it comes from drug abuse or alcohol or that kind of thing.
Well, I'm going to bust that myth right now.
You are? Oh, bust it.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Let's bust that myth. It doesn't. Because a lot of people believe that this is a cause, and it's just simply not. So, what happens when people, drink or use a substance, you all know people who are like the happy drunk, or when they start drinking, they cry, or, somebody drinks too much on a Friday night and they go out and dance on a table, right? It's not because the alcohol made them do it, right? Otherwise, everyone would be a crying drunk. Everyone would be dancing on the table. It's something inside them that the alcohol or substance inhibits that makes them feel free to make that choice or engage in that kind of behavior.
Right.
So, we can't make that connection that simply using alcohol and drugs causes abusive or dangerous behavior, because it doesn't. Now, are they correlated? Absolutely. It can make it worse, more frequent, more violent, depending on the use, depending on, the substance, whatever that pattern looks like for people. But they're just not related in a causation way. So it's important to bust that myth, because a lot of people think, if they just stop drinking or they stop using, they would stop the behavior. And what research tells us actually is that even when people have stopped using and they're sober, they continue the dangerous behavior.
And the dangerous behavior is that something that comes from upbringing? It comes from their environment as when they were young?
Isn't that the silver bullet question, right?
Yeah.
It comes from a lot of different things, right? It comes from a lot of the things. It comes from upbringing. What did you see and experience and feel at home growing up?
Yeah.
What were your expectations? What were relationships like in your home? What were they like in your community? What were they like, not only in your neighborhood community, but maybe like in your faith community or in your school community? We're taking cues from that as children all the time, and we're deciding, what works and what doesn't work. So we're making decisions about that, and there are some folks who are out there who are living in, places, homes, neighborhoods, communities, whatever that looks like for them, that they've never seen anything else. They don't know anything else.
Yeah.
This is the only way it's ever been. So this is the only option. And sometimes what we have to do is open that window and say, hey, come on outside.
Yeah.
The air is nice and fresh out here. Do you know that there's another way? But it takes time. I often equate it to like being on a diet or exercising more, right? If you've ever tried to change a habit and you have not stuck to it, it's because it's hard. It's really hard,
right.
Especially when you've lived your life and you're in this routine this whole way and this is what you've known, to just cold turkey that is really hard. So, it can be upbringing, but it can also be things that what we see on TV, what we see in the movies, what we see on the internet. It normalizes a lot of behavior that is really dangerous. We could talk about TV and movies all day long and how we normalize dangerous relationships, even for young children.
Yeah. So that brings me to an interesting idea. So where do you sort of sit with that idea of movies and TV, offering that to people, and the fine line between it's art or it's damaging? And obviously that comes with parental sort of, no, you can't watch that show. Why can't you watch it?
Right.
Because you can't watch that show because it
Right.
shows bad things. You're not old enough to, but then again, there are some people who are old enough and should know better.
Right. What I go back and forth on, and I have small children from 5 to 11. So, I go back and forth on what they are allowed to watch and what they're not allowed to watch and why and all that kind of stuff. And, the types of conversations that we have with our children in our home about things that are happening in the world and, in our community even, and being very honest about it and, trying to be age appropriate about it. But then, I think on the other side, there are people who have to have conversations like this every single day because this is the reality that they live in. They have to talk about gun safety. They have to talk about, what's happening in their specific neighborhood or in their family or in their schools in a very blunt way because the reality is danger. So, it's tough. I think parents have to just sort of do the best they can and navigate it. What I think is helpful with movies and TV is talking about it, explaining it. If you're letting your kids watch something that you think maybe is a little much for them, talk about it. What did you think about that? How do you feel about that? Does that make sense in the world to you? And compare and contrast too. Here's what I didn't like about this movie. This made me feel really uncomfortable as a parent and as an adult. And letting your kids know what your feelings are too, I think is important because they're looking to you for their behavior to figure out the facts of the world. So the more that we can say to them, this makes me really uncomfortable. My kids always say, in my house when we watch something that they go, that has bad messaging. Mommy, why don't you like that? Because that doesn't have good messaging. Here's what the message is when I watch this.
You must feel so proud when that happens.
Well, sometimes it comes back to bite me too. Sometimes you're like, Mommy, that's not good messaging. That's not good behavior. So, you create a little monster for yourself, right? Yeah. But it's subtle too. I mean, the hard part about doing this in the parenting zone too is that you got to be on your game all the time. You know,
my wife and I have this theory that being a parent now and in the last 5 or 6 years, more so than any time in history, has been the most challenging for parents. I mean, I don't have the facts to back this up, but it's just the idea that they have all these gadgets,
yeah,
and everything that you want to see is on this thing that back back in my day when I was a little kid, we just had stone tablets and mimeograph machines. No, but we couldn't, there were things that were just completely unavailable to our eyes.
Yeah.
We were not able to watch it. It was impossible to obtain. And now that stuff is just like, oh, you could stumble upon it.
By mistake.
And exactly what you said was talking to your kids and asking them how they feel about it and offering up your own feelings. But even that is not something that a lot of people are comfortable with doing. And it's very difficult. It's almost, I've heard this before, like, oh, that's too bleeding heart. Like, remember my feelings and hug the tree. And, you hear that pushback, and that's a tall order for parents to, and some people just excel at it.
Yeah.
Which I think you are. You're one of those. I mean, nobody's perfect, sure.
Some days are better than others.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's how you're doing things.
Right.
And you're able to do it.
And the hard part about, trying to do things in that kind of way is, first of all, you get the bleeding heart thing. I get that. I get that I am sort of unique in that zone. But it's hard to be on your game all the time too, because sometimes I just want to sit down and watch a junky TV show and not talk about anything. I just want to fry my brain and then put everybody to bed and eat some ice cream. I
think you're partially psychic too, because the next thing that I was going to ask you was, in your day in, day out working at Willow Domestic Violence Center and having that, I know that you're working on the positive end because you're trying to prevent and educate, but you can't turn a blind eye to the fact that you are inundated and surrounded with this negative stuff. How do you decompress from that? How do you shut that out for a time to keep yourself healthy mentally and emotionally?
I think that's another silver bullet question, right? Because I think a lot of mental health professionals, people in this field, and just people in general, I think about healthcare professionals. How do you do all those things all day long and then go home and have dinner with your family? Holy cow, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
I think it is, for my role, again, I'm in the prevention side, so I'm not doing direct service with clients and, sitting in that space most of the time and hearing their stories and helping them navigate their lives in that kind of way. However, what I will say is probably 95% of the time when I go out and I'm, talking to people, someone will disclose something to me, right? Will come up afterwards, before, during a presentation. Hey, can I tell you a story right now? Okay. I regularly have people sit through, a presentation or a workshop, but just tears streaming down their face the whole time. It happens because when we talk about this kind of behavior, this is, the most intimate behavior that you can talk about is what's happening behind the door in your home or in your relationship. And that hits a note with people.
Right.
I think that, having this has started years ago, that idea of self-care and how do you process this started years ago for me. I would sit with college students who had done really bad things sometimes. Or, what I think is most interesting about how I ended up here at Willow and where I came from is I'm all about a story. Right? I'm all about a good story. And, sitting with students and hearing what their backstory was and then why they were sitting in front of me, it often just blew my mind of oh my gosh, it all makes sense. Of course you're here. Of course this happens to you. Let's talk about where we move from here. It's understanding that people come from somewhere. And then figuring out how to leave that behind too. Right. When I was meeting with students, it was never about me. It has nothing to do with me. I just happened to be the person sitting in the seat that day asking the questions. It could have been anybody.
Right.
And I sometimes think that about, you know, my role at Willow as well, is that, you know, I could be any presenter talking about anything anywhere. It has not, your story and what has happening to you has nothing to do with me. And so I just can't accept that as mine and accept taking it with me. You know, I mean, all the self-care things, right? You know, like you have to have a self-care sort of routine. You have to have people that you lean on. But at the end of the day, you have to recognize in our work, it's not about me. It's not about how I feel or what's going on with me. It's about this particular person. I just happen to be one stop in their journey at this moment in time. Because the reality is we can't save people either, right? I can't take people home with me.
Yeah.
I don't have enough room. Right? But, you know, we can't put people in bubbles. We can't, you know, give them bulletproof vests. Even at the end of the day, an order of protection is just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's only so much we can do in those moments to help and support and be there for people. And we just have to know that that's the best we can do. And that's hard.
Yeah.
That's really, really hard. But you just have to remove yourself from that. It's not about me. It's about them. And I know that I've given them everything that they need for today.
On my website, or when you booked the time, I said, "Tell me 3 words that describe you."
Oh gosh, what did I?
Do you remember what you?
I think I might know what they are.
Approachable.
Yep.
Engaging. Firm.
Yeah.
And I have to say, those are really 3 really perfect words to describe you. I mean, I only know you superficially from our interactions here and knowing what you do, but those are 3 exact words that I would describe you, because you are. You're very approachable. You know, you're very easy to talk to. You're very engaging. You could talk for a long time, and I'm not saying that as a slam. That's a good thing, but you're also firm. You have to be in what you do. Mm-hmm. And where did you get these skills? Where did you acquire these skills? Was it working with the college students? I mean, is that really where that all came from?
I think so. You know, that's where I started as a great base. And I'm also going to shout out to Andrea Holland here, because I did a workshop with her, and she talks about, you know, like how do you sell yourself and like what's your brand? And that actually gave me those 3 words going through her workshop.
Shout out to the Mouthy Broad.
So shout out to Andrea Holland, because she's the bomb. So, yeah, you know, I think it started in that zone and knowing that students are not going to talk to you unless you're approachable, right? You got to have something about who you are that sets people at ease the second that you walk in the room. You know, and then in doing this work in domestic violence, you know, I'm with everybody from like 7th graders to like geriatric medicine to law enforcement to healthcare professionals.
Yeah, you have to be a social chameleon.
You really do. You got to change your skin at all times, and you have to figure out how to be approachable to everybody. And my spirit human is Michelle Obama, because Michelle Obama wanted people to know she was a real human. You can hug me. Everyone can hug me. And that's sort of how I live my persona when I'm with people. I want you to be able to come up to me and make a disclosure. I want you to be able to feel like you can hug me. I want you to be able to feel like I am some kind of trustworthy human being. And then I want to engage you too. I want to be engaging so that you will listen to me and hear, you know, the message that I have. But I also want to engage you at the same time, because again, it's not about me. It's about this relationship thing that we've got going on. Mm-hmm. I can talk all day long, but until you feel engaged and connected to what I'm saying, you're not going to learn anything or walk away with anything. And then, I mean, firm at the end of the day, I'm not messing around, right? You know what I mean? I was the consequence person for a long time. I was policy, procedure, rules all the time. And I think that really has a time and a place. So, you know, we can be engaging, we can hug, we can do all the things. But at the end of the day, we have a mission, and we're going to stick to our mission, and we're going to accomplish the work that we need to do. And we're going to leave knowing that we did that, right?
And I say this not as a purveyor of a podcast studio, but you should have a podcast. You should have a radio show or a show on CNN or something. That's just
I would
me.
love to. I could sit in front of a microphone all day.
You would rock.
Right, this is fun.
You would really rock. I would say you have multiple callings, and one of your callings would be as a broadcast personality.
Which is funny because I went to my bachelor's degree is from SUNY Oswego, which has a wonderful broadcasting school. And when I was there, I was like, nah, that doesn't really seem like that much fun to me. Dang it. When you're 18, you don't know a darn thing.
Well, that's not true because there's a whole lot of money in that field unless you do hit it big, and it's like lightning striking.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah.
There's nothing like being on the mic and getting paid minimum wage.
Right.
Watching, it's like, hey, I love my job. We've been asking a lot of silver bullet questions, as you phrased it. Mm-hmm. I think I might have another one. I don't know. Maybe it's a regular bullet. I'm not sure. What would you, and I've actually, this is definitely something that I wanted to know, was when someone close to you suspect is having an issue with domestic violence or abuse or any kind of emotional, anything like that. How does a loved one approach that without, that fear of, if I jump on this too hard, they're going to push me away or go closer to the problem?
That is another silver bullet question. That's a great question. First, before I answer the question, I just want to put it out there that abusive behavior is more than physical abuse. So when we talk about like domestic violence and dating violence, most people go right to the physical stuff, the punching, the kicking, and all that stuff. I mean, it happens all the time. We see it all the time in our community, but it doesn't ever start there. Right? It almost never do you go on a first date, get punched in the face and go, that was great. Let's do that again next Friday. Right? That's not a thing that happens.
Right.
So, we have to know that this is a pattern of behavior and it builds over time. Where it starts is really in like that verbal and emotional piece. It starts with like name calling. It starts with boundary pushing. Right? So, I told you that I didn't really want to do this, or I felt uncomfortable with this, or, somebody just starts showing up at work and you're like, you can't do that. And then they just keep doing it. Right? Even though you've set that boundary, and then you let it go. You know why? Because our friends go, oh my God, he's just really cute. He really likes you. You're so lucky you have somebody that likes you so much. Right? So please stop doing that. Hey, friends and family, stop saying those words because that is harmful. That's number one. Stop that. And then we convince ourselves, okay, well, it's just this thing. And then people keep pushing our boundaries until, we reach some kind of boundary that we never thought we would get to. And once we cross that boundary, we're like, well, we've come this far. I guess I'll just put up with it. I've got these years in, we've got this status in the community. There's something about the relationship that we now are so into it that it's harder to get out of it than it is to stay in. So, it's a pattern of behavior and it builds over time. So we have to really look for some of those emotional, verbal pieces first. It's the isolation too, especially with young people. Now, this is a little bit harder to see with young people because, when you're in a new dating relationship, young kids have the tendency to just stick together and go in the corner and make out for weeks, right? And they lose track of all their friends and eventually they come back. But when we see them not able to come back, when we see them stopping doing the things that they love to do, I'm going to quit this sport, or I'm going to not do this activity, or I'm going to not spend time with my friends ever. Those are huge red flags for anybody, but especially for young people.
Right.
When we see that happening.
If the boyfriend or girlfriend prohibits them from seeing their friends, especially friends of the opposite sex.
Especially friends of the opposite sex. Yeah. And I hear all the time from young people in the community, well, they don't need friends because they have me, or they don't need friends of the opposite sex. I don't trust them with those other people. Well, that's a trust issue, not an opposite sex issue. Right. Right? You got to work on the trust, because if you trust them and you've got a good, healthy relationship, doesn't matter where they are. Doesn't matter what they're doing. If somebody approaches them and they're behaving in some kind of way, they're going to take care of themselves. And I know that they are because I trust them. And if they can't, they're going to call for help in some kind of way from somebody else. So it is listening to that. But sometimes, especially, it sounds so sneaky too, because it sounds like this. Scott, I just don't want you to hang out with your friends tonight. Please, can't you just spend more time with me? I just want to be with you. I just want to be together all the time. I can't be without you. Right? And they just lay that guilt on, but then it's all the time. So now I'm always making a decision of this person is going to be so upset with me if I hang out with other friends. I guess I'll just stay with them. Right? And it feels more of it's not a positive choice. It's a choice laden with guilt. And that's tough because it sounds like it's coming from a place of caring and love. But what it is, it's manipulation. And it's using that care and love against that person until they've blocked out all the friends, all the support networks, all the family. Gone. Now I only have you to rely on.
Right. And this is happening over time. So it's subtle, it's slow, it's in increments. So it's not something that suddenly you're like, oh my goodness. Yesterday I was fine, and today I can't see anybody. It happens over.
Most of the time it's over some period of time. Now, does it happen like instantly? Like we're together now, boom, you're not allowed to hang out with people anymore. Yeah, we certainly see that in our line of work. But most of the time, it is over some kind of period of time that it's a little bit slower and just manipulative is really what it is.
Yeah.
So what do you do when somebody's in that situation, right? You see them going down that road and you're worried about them, or you see other signs of, abusive relationship. You hear the name calling. You hear things that sound scary and not right. It is hard. It's really hard to address that kind of stuff. I mean, my tip for anybody is just to ask. Just ask. Just say, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay in your relationship? Are you safe? Do you have things that you need? Do you have supports? And just ask. When we kind of try to dance around the question, sometimes people don't always understand what you're asking. Yeah. Right? Your doctor is supposed to ask you every time you go to the doctor's office, are your relationships safe, or are you safe at home? Which is a terrible question because, is my home safe? Yeah, the door's locked. Like, there's no bears in there. We're all good. But when we use a little bit more words, is your relationship safe? Are you fearful of anyone in your life? Do you dread seeing them? Dread is actually a really great word to use for anybody, because sometimes we're not even fearful of somebody, but we dread them. I was just with a group of professionals recently, and we were talking about child abuse, and we were talking about corporal punishment, actually, that spanking is a cultural thing. I completely disagree with it, but it's a cultural thing. It's a thing. So there's a difference, though, when kids are spanked and they know that they're like going to get a whooping a little bit, right? And when they dread it, they fear it. Every time they make a decision about something, they wonder if that's going to be the consequence, and they start changing their lives around that consequence. They start having that dread every time they see that person because they're not sure if they're going to get the whooping. That is danger. Just simply like, hey, sit up in church, whap on the back of the head. Me personally, Lisa Nolan, I'm not sure that that's appropriate. Still doesn't help. But it's a thing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a difference between unhealthy and dangerous behaviors. And we have to listen for this, that fear, that dread. There's some kind of underlying current that's going on that doesn't feel quite right. Ask about it. Ask about it. Now, the danger in asking is what, Scott? What's going to happen if you ask that question?
Well, they say everything's fine.
Yeah.
And you know that everything's not fine, but they say, no, everything's great.
Yeah.
And then what do you do?
And
you
then
can't
what
do
do?
anything.
You can't do anything.
Yeah.
And if they said everything's not fine, then what do you do?
Then you call Willow and ask them. Right? Because they're the people that know how to handle that.
You can.
Call someone who knows.
Call someone who knows. So you definitely can call somebody who knows. But, that's also a hard barrier for people to overcome, too. Like, I don't want to call a random hotline and I don't know who's answering. I don't know who that person is. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I told you, Scott, because I thought you would help me.
Right.
Right? So it puts you in a whole different boat. And we already said we can't save people.
Yeah.
That's not our job. So what is our job? Our role is to just support people, right? You have resources out there. Here's all the resources and things that are available to you. Let me help you navigate them. We can do this together. I will stick with you and we'll do this together. I won't leave you. What happens a lot of times in dangerous relationships is our friends and our family leave us because they get tired of it. It's so tiring. It's difficult to watch. And that's how we get left behind. Now, that's a self-care mechanism, too. We have to set some boundaries with folks in dangerous relationships as well. But what people truly need is those consistent people out there that they know are safe so that when their moment comes, they know who they can turn to. Mm-hmm. They know this is the person that has the resources. I'm going to go to them when I'm in trouble, and they can help me navigate it. But when you've cut yourself off, or when they've cut you off, or they know that you're not there, or you're judging them, or, you've said things to them that you can't take back, they're not coming to you anymore. So our role is to be the safe person, to have the resources, and to not leave people behind, and just do the best we can. It's just to do the best we can.
How fulfilled are you from working like in this field?
That's a great question.
I think I would guess that you're very fulfilled.
I am very fulfilled. Coming from a job in consequences where believe it or not, no one says thanks for being suspended from college. And you know what? Their parents definitely don't say thank you for that.
Right.
But even that was a fulfilling role too, because the conversations and the just the situations that students found themselves in was fulfilling, because we were able to talk it through. And, not everyone is being suspended or, removed or whatever. It was a lot of like, you know what? I'm better than this. This was a terrible decision. You're right. You are. Now you tell me how you're going to fix this for yourself. And seeing students go on and be successful and graduate and have careers. So it wasn't an entirely not fulfilling role, but this is totally different, because people are, they're asking for us all the time. Can you come in? We want to hear this. We want to learn about this.
Yeah.
We want to know more.
Yeah.
We want to know what to do. And to hear sort of like that, I didn't know this. Thank you. This was so helpful. Or even just this one thing stuck with me. That's everything. Right? Because it's the ripple effect, right? That one thing sticks with you, and then you tell somebody else, and then we've got a whole community that knows something that's a little bit different. So it is very fulfilling in that sense. But, it's tough. We see a lot of things. Yeah. We see a lot of things, and we're navigating systems in the community that just suck. The systems suck for a variety of different reasons. At no, one person or one system's fault. It's a collaboration of things. And that is hard. When I get down on the work and I get down on the job, it's because of the systems.
Just like the government systems and all the red tape and the different bureaucracy and that kind of thing that makes it really difficult to get things done.
Yeah. And, there's a story behind every system, too. Like you said, I'm a collector of stories. I always want to know, like, what else is going on in there?
Right.
What happened to you back there? So when I look at some of the systems, I look at our judicial system, I look at our law enforcement system, I look at some of our social services systems, and I can see them and I can say, wow, that's really messed up. And then I can think, well, what happened over there?
Yeah.
Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah.
What caused the system to be this way? How did we even get there? And start working back that way and going, oh man, well, of course it's messed up. Look at what happened, or look at where it came from. Or, the people who are in the system, what are their stories? And how did that translate into the system becoming what it is today too? So, I'm always kind of like trying to reach back in time to figure out what happened there, what's going on over there.
It's not always possible to find that answer to, I would assume.
It's not.
Because that's years and years and years of weird, societal things or managerial decisions that happened way back because of one person's. Yeah, that's
right.
A lot of sleuthing to find that out.
It's a lot of sleuthing, and it's culture, and it is, geographic locations sometimes.
Right.
So, for me, it's all just a big puzzle, and like putting it together, and where did this all come from, and how do we take what we see here, knowing all of this stuff around here, and work with what we've got here. It's not easy. It still makes me frustrated, but, it gives me context to have a more positive attitude about it. We're on positive blatherings, right? Because it's easy to get down on people. It's easy to get down on systems and just say, this sucks and this is terrible and we have to change everything and everybody is the worst. If we can collect more of those puzzle pieces to say, well, this is how we ended up here, it still does suck. But how can we take what we know to navigate this and put the pieces together a little bit better?
That's pretty profound.
I didn't really come up with that.
Well, you're the one telling me, so I haven't really considered that before. So
it's a practice. It's thinking about trauma, right? So, we're dealing with our work in trauma, and there's all kinds of wonderful trauma researchers out there and great books that you can read on trauma. But, the idea of having sort of a trauma-informed approach to people or systems or life is what happens to you? What happens back there that's causing this in front of me? And I think that we can apply that to individual humans and to systems and, to lots of different things. So for me, it's a practice of thinking about that all the time.
Right.
What happens to you this morning, Scott, that caused, something to happen during this interview that wouldn't have otherwise happened?
What happened? The camera going all haywire?
Right. But even, it's considering that. And, honestly, a word of caution on adopting a trauma-informed mindset, because once you start practicing it, it's hard to turn it off. I'm the person in Wegmans when I'm like walking through the checkout line that I'm like, what's going on, cashier? How are you today? How's your shift going? When do you get off? My kids are just like, Mom, come on. Stop asking people questions.
So when you go through and the person who's taking care of you is mean or gruff or just whatever, you instead of going, what a jerk. Yeah, what a jerk. You say, well, I wonder why.
I wonder why.
But you know what? I don't know if it's bad to be like that.
Well, it's exhausting sometimes.
Well, yeah, I can see.
Because, like I said, it's hard to turn off sometimes. Yeah. And sometimes I just want to get my milk and go. And other times I'm really like, "You okay?
Yeah.
You got everything you need today? I hope your day gets better." It's having that mindset.
Empathy is something that's really missing in our society. I think it's exhausting, sure, but. Man, it's a really great thing to have. That when you run into someone like that, they kind of change your perspective on things. And you're like, wow, I mean, not everybody, but if I were acting nasty and you were like, what's wrong? Why are you being this way? Did something happen to you? And then I would step back and go, oh, geez, you know what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for opening my eyes about that.
Right. Or even, if somebody's ever done that to you, you've been having a bad day and just acting like a total crispy piece of bacon, and somebody says
to
you like,
bacon is delicious. Let's use a different analogy.
But when bacon gets overcooked and it's crispy.
Yeah.
When you're crispy. You're crispy. Okay. And somebody says to you, like, Lisa, what's going on? Why are you so crispy? Like, what's going on with you today? You okay? Everything happened. Something happened this morning. And I'll say, you know what, man, I had this happened to me in the morning. I had summer camp drop-offs. I spilled coffee down my white shirt. Then the kids called because somebody forgot a lunch. And then daycare was calling. And I was just like, I'm going to lose it. Yeah. I am going to lose it. And the people I work with were like, yeah, all right. And I was like, no. No, let me just readjust myself and get back into it. When you have that moment where somebody assumes sort of a good intention of like, this isn't who you are. Who are you in there? What's going on with you? Yeah. It can change your own mindset too. Yeah. So even thinking about, the cashier at Wegmans, like, how's it going today? What's going on in there? You okay? Good. I hope your day is great. I think sometimes that has the power to switch. I think empathy is a superpower.
Yeah, I agree. What,
You're still laughing about the bacon, aren't you? No.
Oh gosh, every time this has been just crazy. All right. Imagine you can go back and talk to your 15-year-old self. All right, cool.
I have a story about this.
You do this. You're a person of stories, so
yeah. I have a story about this.
Okay. You went back in time and spoke to your 15-year-old self?
I didn't speak to myself, but my 15-year-old self spoke to me.
Interesting.
Amazing. I had an English teacher in high school. Shout out to Patricia Maurer, Greece Olympia High School. And she made us write letters to ourselves, like sophomore, 15 years old. And then she held on to them. And after a certain time, she mailed them to us, at our home address or whatever. And I remember at the time I got it, whatever, read it, was like, whatever, tossed it in a box. Literally, I think actually during COVID, I was clearing things out. We were all cleaning our attics because we had nothing else to do.
Sure.
So I was cleaning out and I found it and I read through it. I was sobbing.
Wow.
I could not believe the maturity and the foresight of my 15-year-old self and what I had to say to my adult self. I was just sobbing. I also thought to myself, who was this person on this day? Because I remember being 15, and these were not words that came out of my mouth at 15. So it's fascinating to see them on paper.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you give me any details?
I'm sure. I wish I was prepared. I would have brought it with me. But It was really, honestly, it was about sort of like having empathy and being sort of gentle with yourself and just knowing that, doing what makes you feel at least a little bit happy and fulfilled. And just, I think my hope for myself at 15 was that whenever I was reading this letter next, that I would just have a good group of people that I loved and I supported and who supported me. Right? I think that was literally the gist of it.
That's amazing.
Right? What 15-year-old writes that down? I don't know. Because I'm telling you, on any other day, I'm sure I would have written like, this is stupid. Screw Mrs. Maurer. Like, I don't want to do this. She's making me write this letter. For whatever reason, I apparently felt inspired that day. So shout out to Patricia Maurer. Thank you for making me do that.
Wow. And shout out to your 15-year-old self for actually taking something seriously.
Right.
But that's amazing because you have a direct line from that time to now, and how the way you are now is just so connected, and it was there. It was there.
So
it was
connected.
waiting to come out and explore
waiting.
the world.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't that interesting? Do you ever find like in your, I'm turning the table. I'm going to ask you a question.
Do it.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about stuff like that like something was waiting and you always sort of knew it was there. And then when it came, you're like, oh, I knew this. I knew this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
It's weird.
It's really weird. It doesn't happen as much as I'd like it to.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, it's that, it's like that magic, that universe magic.
Universe magic. That's what it is.
When something happens and it goes ding, and you go, oh, really?
Right? You're like, yep. From when I was 10 years old. Yep. Okay.
But being able to identify that is quite special because not everybody can.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of that just goes over, and it goes over my head sometimes too. And my wife will be like, "Do you realize that this and this and this?" And I'm like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's good to have those people around us to sort of point that out.
Yeah. See, I can be, fluffy, and I can just help other people recognize their stuff. Right? That's okay. That's my role. It's fine. I'll help you find your way.
All right. I'm changing the title to Fluffy Nolan. So. What's on your radar for, say, the next 5 years? What do you have? Do you have any goals? Do you have any things that you want to accomplish, or what are you hoping to happen?
I mean, apart from ruling the world.
Yes. What?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I don't know. Wow. That's a great seat. Now I have no words.
No words.
I don't know. It's so hard because I never thought I'd be where I am right at this moment. So to really sort of like rethink a career trajectory or a pathway trajectory is, I have been thinking about this a lot, and I don't know the answer to it. I mean, in the short term, professionally, we're trying to be as many places as we can. We're trying to get into schools and colleges and doctors' offices and just say, hey, we're here for you. We want to support you, and just try to literally be as many places as we possibly can be. I think also professionally in the community, just connecting people. What also brings me joy in my role is, when you see somebody over here and then somebody over here, and you're like, if these two people or these two things were together, it would be magic.
Yeah.
That moment is everything for me.
Yeah.
I love that. So, I've got some of those connections sort of in the works right now, and I can see long term how beneficial some of those things will be. So I'm just sort of like looking forward to like planting some of those seeds, watering them over the next couple of years, and then hoping that they are just going to take off and grow on their own and be really beneficial to the community. So, so some of those things. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure where else I would be.
That's perfectly fine too. You said you were 3.5 years into this job, into this sort of new thing that you're doing, and to look 5 years ahead. I know when we first moved here from Florida in 2007, if someone asked me, where are you going to be in the next 5 years? I'm like, hopefully at this job that I just got, which only lasted for 11 months. Thank you, 2008.
Oh, that was a time, 2008.
Yeah.
That was a time.
But that's thinking I'm constantly battling this idea of living in the moment and also looking toward the future.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to navigate.
Yeah. I think one of the things about sort of making a left turn in where I thought my career would go is that now I'm just sort of on a swivel, right? Nothing is closed to me. I'm like, what is that? That sounds interesting. I'll try that. I'll do this. I think that has been the benefit of sort of doing something that I wasn't sure that I could do or that I even really wanted to do, full time, and seeing how successful it's been and how well adjusted I've been to it. It's like, okay, I can do a lot more than I thought that I was capable of or that I had confidence to do. So I think it's just kind of keeping my head on a swivel. What sounds interesting next?
Yeah.
What else is coming? Who's that person over there? I'm going to go talk to you, see what you got going on. And if I can invade your space. Andrea Holland.
Andrew's she hasn't been here in a while. She's one of my regular peeps here at Rockbox. So
yeah, there's
I miss her.
There's just so many cool people out there in our community too, like telling stories. I love this environment. I love a podcast. The Rochester Storyteller series. I love that. Trying to figure out like how I can get in there. What kind of story do I got that I can tell the people? So, it's thinking about some of those opportunities that are a little bit, outside my scope, but not really. So, just staying on the swivel.
Have you heard about Listen to Your Mother?
Yes.
That's a great show.
So good.
Been involved with them for the last
so good
4 years, I think.
Yep.
Helping them do the live stream and recording it at Hochstein. It's a great series.
Yep.
So, well, I think you're still at the pivot point.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You're still pivoting.
Yeah.
You're going to find where that's going to lead you. So that's great.
I'm not worried.
That's awesome. You can find Lisa at willowcenter.org, 222-SAFE, 7233, or 348-SAFE for the text. Did my research.
Did your research. Thank you.
And I've also heard it quite a few times in this room. But I really appreciate you taking the time, finally getting together. Regardless of what this room wanted to happen, we got this recorded.
We made it happen. Technology, you got nothing on us.
Yeah, we'll see. Let me go check the computer and make sure, but I think we're good.
Cool.
So, again, thanks so much. And we look forward to a lot of great things coming from you and from Willow.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed every minute, and I'm sure I'll be back.